Here's the truth about our radio station, a station I love, and I raise my hand, I'm one of them. I'm a child, all right? I'm an immature child because I'm a fan. I'm a sports fan. Sal Licata, BT, they were on before us. They may not admit it. Maybe they're too proud to admit it. They're children, okay? They're diehard sports fans. They're children. Who really doesn't admit it is Boomer, but Boomer's as big a kid as anybody. The only person here at WFAN that's actually mature, it's not you, Sean, by the way, no offense. It's Tiki Barber. Tiki's the calm one. Tiki's the rational one. Tiki's the one who can say, all right, guys, let's just sit on my knee for a second. I'm going to explain reality to you. So I believe it is very, very important on this Friday, January 24th, with all the craziness going on in the world. Pete Alonso's going to Toronto. Pete Alonso's not going to Toronto. Scott Boras is using this. Scott Boras called up the Mets and said, you've got 5 seconds to make a better offer for Pete Alonso or the world's going to explode. Please, can you rationally tell me what the hell is going on with Pete Alonso?
Yes. It has nothing to do with Pete Alonso. It has everything to do with your general manager, David Stearns. Mm-hmm. David Stearns, who looks meek, looks like he's not one to be, aggressive. Looks like he'd be a perfect financial executive on Wall Street or banker or an accountant like your father.
Yeah. CPA,
you know what I mean.
Yes.
Certified public accountant like your father.
Yes.
But the reality is David Stearns is a killer. Like, don't let that milquetoast-looking facade fool you. The dude does not care about how you think you should be treated. And we know this because of what he did in Milwaukee. Like, we forget when he was hired in Milwaukee, he was young. He was 29, 30 years old in 2015. And he endorsed Craig Counsell as to be their manager and then fired half the staff. The same thing is happening here in New York. Now, he didn't fire half the staff, but he did take a very critical look at what this team makeup was all about. And I know that last year I kept saying it's an evaluation year. Yeah, the underachieving early in the season, it's obvious because they're just evaluating, right? They're not trying to win. But what he was actually doing was seeing what this team was made out of. Like, see who had the mettle to push through a low expectation and come out looking like stars. And Francisco Lindor did that. Sevy did that. A lot of the guys on this team did that. But one thing happened that I think challenged his ability to be that killer, and it was Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso firing his long-term agent and hiring the guy who gets what every other player wants hit team to give him, which is the most money that you can imagine and maximizing your money potential. And David Stearns, while he knew that Juan Soto was going to take every dime that Steve Cohen had, was not willing to let Scott Boras do that with anybody else. And so what we've got is an ego match. And it's a aggressive one.
Yeah.
It is I don't care what you say, this is what I believe. Well, I don't care what you say, this is what I believe. And trust me, he's winning it. And he's dominating it. And Pete Alonso, as much as it sucks for him, is the victim of the ego match between David Stearns and Scott Boras. And it sucks.
Yeah.
It sucks for Met fans.
Sure.
It sucks for Pete Alonso's short and long-term future, but that is the reality. David Stearns, just like he did when he was in Milwaukee, had to establish right away what he is all about. Otherwise, people are going to take advantage of it from here throughout his tenure with the New York Mets. And you know what? I applaud him. You applaud him. I do.
Is he going to win, though, and get him back? Or is he going to win and wave goodbye to Pete Alonso?
No. I think ultimately, because it feels like this Toronto Blue Jays phantom offer is like, it feels like it's fugazi.
Well, it's funny. I was watching a Blue Jay YouTube fan video this morning.
Yes.
Just to get an impression of what they're thinking. And they believe they're being used by Scott Boras and Pete Alonso, and that this is all just one giant show to get him back to the Mets.
That's right.
Now, I get why a Blue Jay fan feels that way because they've been used constantly, whether it's Shohei Ohtani or Juan Soto or Corbin Burns or maybe now in the case Pete Alonso. So the Blue Jay fan doesn't even believe they're going to end up with Pete Alonso.
Well, the Blue Jay beat writer doesn't believe they're going to end up with Pete Alonso.
That's true.
They're not hearing all this, oh, whoa, they're getting close. They're advancing towards the finish line. The guys that are actually covering the Blue Jays are like, what the hell are you talking about?
That's what's so interesting. The reporting yesterday from Met reporters were Pete's close to Toronto. Mm-hmm. The reporting from Blue Jay reporters were not so fast.
Where are they getting their sources from? X?
Yeah.
The internet? Some random blogger?
Here's all.
Where are the sources to this? Because if it's not coming from David Stearns, trust me, it's not true.
Yeah, here's what
Because Pete, and not Pete, but Scott Boras will lie to you.
Oh, yeah.
David Stearns will not lie to you.
Yeah, well, I think Scott Boras will leak to you. I'm not sure David Stearns has leaked anything. I don't know if the Mets are leaking anything. You say a few things I agree with. Number one, when I met David Stearns last year, I got to sit in his office. I looked him straight into the eyes. This makes me think of something George W. Bush once said about Vladimir Putin. He said, I sat there, looking at Putin. I looked into his eyes, and I saw a soul. I looked into David Stearns' eyes. I didn't see anything. Like, I saw a really smart guy. I saw a guy that was kind enough to let me bitch at him for 45 minutes, but I didn't see a killer. I didn't know what I saw. And maybe that's what makes him so good.
Those are the best killers.
That you don't actually know what you're seeing. And here's the reality about David Stearns, and this is for all my fellow Met fans, like my old partner Joe Beningo too. Because, look, I want Pete back, so we're on the same side of this. I want him back on the New York Mets. I've made that very clear. But there is a big difference between David Stearns and Frank Cashin. There's a big difference between David Stearns and Steve Phillips. There's a difference between David Stearns and the Wilpons, Steve Cohen and the Wilpons. And I'll tell you what that is. When the New York Mets traded Tom Seaver, I wasn't around, but it was a dark, dark day, and the days were going to get darker, and they did. When the Mets lost Darryl Strawberry, the days were going to get darker, and they did. When the Mets lose guys like that, the guys that have lit up Met history, they usually led to darker, more disgusting days. If the Mets lose Pete Alonso, that's not the case.
No.
That's a huge difference. Now, again, I want him back. I want Pete on the Mets for a myriad of reasons. But the one thing that needs to be held in check to my fellow Met fan is the idea that if they don't bring him back, it's just like Tom Seaver and it's just like Darryl Strawberry. It's not. You know what the difference is? Tom Seaver was the best pitcher in baseball, and there was no reason they should have ever broken up and traded him. Darryl Strawberry was still an ascending star. There was no reason they should have let him go to L.A. With Pete Alonso, even though I do want him back, there are more reasons to say, I don't know what he's going to be in the next 4 or 5 years. I don't know what he's going to be in the next 3 or 4 years. And also, this is an organization that when they lost Darryl Strawberry, signed Vince Coleman.
Right.
When they lose Pete Alonso, they will have done it in the same offseason where they added Juan Soto. So when we talk about Pete, good and bad, we have to try to take out our own history because our own history is so different than what we're experiencing today. This will not lead to darker days. This will lead to a heated debate, and we'll discuss it. But the idea that this is Seaver or Strawberry all over again, that is a misnomer. And I think the other thing is, even though David Stearns grew up like me and a lot of other people listening as a true Met fan, and he did, because one of the things I talked to him about when I was in that room with him is his fandom, and you could tell when someone's a real fan. They know things.
Right? Grew up on Upper East Side, Upper West Side?
In Manhattan.
In Manhattan.
Yes, and he told me about his relatives taking him to Game 4 against the Atlanta Braves in 1999. That was the game before the Robin Ventura game, because he said to me, hey, that game's real special to me. Down 3-0, John Olerud. Like, that's a fan. So he's a fan. But even when you're a fan, when you're this successful, you're ruthless. And you're going to do what's best for business. And as much as I may disagree with it, and a lot of people may disagree with it, in his mind, what's best for business is not kowtowing to Scott Boras and giving Pete Alonso whatever he wants.
Right. When Scott Boras has the generational talent of this generation and Juan Soto, you know what? You're going to get one over on us, Scott. You're going to play us against the 3 other teams or 4 other teams that are willing to go around $700 million for Juan Soto, and we really want him, so you're going to win this one.
Right.
But everything else that you bring our way, it better be worth it. And this is partly on Pete for not having an epic, I'm still ascending season in his contract year.
It's also on Pete for not accepting the offer that was given him either 2 years ago or even last week, the 3-year, $60 million offer.
Of course, but you got to realize that athletes, when they finally get their chance to cash out or cash in, I should say, on their success, you're going to bet on yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what you've done your entire life. You're betting on yourself in your contract year to have a contract year. And Pete did that, fired his agent, and then tried to do it. And the pressure from Boris and whoever else, it crumbled him for a lot of the season. Now, it came through when it mattered in the end against Milwaukee, and we all know the revitalization of the season for Pete, and that's one thing. But when you look at the bigger picture, it didn't tell you, oh, he's getting better. I can't wait to see 32 and 33 and 34.
That is true.
Man, you're hitting the downside.
Okay.
Your WAR, your OPS, your big numbers that are most important are fading. And so you hurt yourself, and it's your fault.
I agree with
and if I was David Stearns, that's exactly what I would say to Scott Boras.
Okay.
Get that nonsense out of here.
All right.
You can look at it. I saw you scoring games, Scott Boras.
Scoring games?
He was scoring a game at the Met game we went to.
Not as good as I do.
Of course he does, because he wasn't paying attention like you did. But I saw you scoring games.
Right.
I'm sure you did it for every single one of Pete Alonso's games. I'm David Stearns. This is what I'm saying to him.
Right.
You tell me that he's worth what you're asking for. And he can't.
You're right about this, and that's why today, and even the last few days, I'm not mad. I'm not mad because he hasn't left yet.
No.
But I'll tell you where things get very, very complicated, where I will get mad. So the Mets reportedly have offered Pete about $23 million a year. Let's just call it $23 million a year.
Which, by the way, isn't that far off from what the first base market is.
Totally agree. And you could even say it's a very fair offer, right? Mm-hmm. They've offered him $23 million a year, and they've broken Scott and Pete out of asking for long-term deals. It's a 3-year contract, opt-outs involved, $23 million a year. Okay. All right, we're good. We're good with that. It's a good figure. Everybody's okay with that, right? Mm-hmm. Even those that are good with Alonso leaving, they're like, hey, that's a fair offer. Just take it. All right. If he ends up signing with the Blue Jays for the same amount of years, but let's say it's $26 million a year, that's where I'm going to say to David Stearns, and to anybody out there listening to my voice who says, it's too much for Pete Alonso. What I would say is, what makes it too much?
It's not
23 is good, but 25 I have an issue with. Someone's got to explain that to me in a non-salary cap world, why the cutoff is that number.
It's not. It's not at all. It has nothing to do with the number.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with what he thinks Pete Alonso is worth. This is all about trying to bring Scott Boras down a tick.
I agree, but I agree with that, Teak. That's why I'm not mad at the Mets yet. They're playing this thing perfectly, right? It's a negotiation. Why negotiate against yourself? But once someone beats that, if that's what happens, don't you have to then move the number? Because Scott finally got something more than 23 per?
Do we have the X on all the beat writers from Toronto? I'd love to see what their take is on all of this.
On how much they would give Pete Alonso?
No. On what the Blue Jays are actually offering Pete Alonso.
Well, we don't know.
But somebody's got it. I mean, you tell me they cover the Blue Jays every day, all year, and they don't have an inkling or a clue if what we're hearing here in New York and from the leakers of Scott Boris's numbers.
Yeah, but you just hit on it. Like, they're leaks. The only thing that's going to matter is what the final numbers are, right?
I know.
That's the only thing that's going to matter.
Shouldn't we know? Shouldn't the
not if the Blue Jays aren't leaking stuff out.
The Blue Jays are the most desperate team in baseball.
Yeah,
they're trying to give away hundreds of millions of dollars, and nobody's taking it.
No, I get that.
Notwithstanding. So, of course, they would leak it. Of course, if I was the Blue Jays,
maybe there's no offer.
And I wanted the Pete Alonsos of the world or whoever to come, I'd say, hey, you know what? Tell the world that we're offering this massive number. Mm-hmm. Why are we not hearing it from the Blue Jays?
Maybe it's not real.
And that's what I've come to the conclusion of.
That's possible.
That this is not real. Because yesterday, before we started our show, it was a done deal.
Right.
A done deal with Pete Alonso going to the Blue Jays. It's now Friday. Now, are we going to do a news dump on one of your big free agent signings this offseason? Hell no, you're not.
Right.
So I can't think of anything but say this is BS.
So it's all BS.
This is nonsense.
And it's a new concept for Scott Boras to get more money out of the New York Mets. That's what your conclusion is.
What else can I conclude?
Don't know.
The Toronto Blue Jays are not signing Pete Alonso on a Friday when nobody gives a crap ahead of the NFL championship weekend. There's no way that's happening.
We will.
Why would you bury that?
No, I got you. The thing is, like all free agency, I don't know what the hell's going on. All I know is the Mets are not negotiating against themselves. I totally understand that. But if they lose him to Toronto, I think it's going to be fair to say, why is 23 the cutoff? Okay. And that's a fair value, but 25 I have an issue with.
That's your takeaway. My takeaway is David Stearns is a hell of a president of baseball operation.
David Stearns is cooking right now.
Yeah, he is.
Well, there is something else that David Stearns may have up his sleeve that we absolutely need to address when we come back. Are they going to bring in one of the most hated guys in the last decade in New York Metsdom? We'll tell you who that guy is and our thoughts, plus your calls at 888-808-1019.